Well, everybody, I'm still alive. Following the shift I had last night, I never intended for this to be a series. And thank you for all your kind words and suggestions, but I want to address a few issues. Number 1, I am in fact a manager at McDonald's, not a fictional writer. Number 2, the issue with my age. The minimum working age at the McDonald's I work at is 14, and I started at 14 and a half, so it's been roughly 6 years since I started. And number 3, I'm not going to give out the location of my McDonald's. However, if you drive from Richmond to Blacktown down some unconventional routes, you might pass by. Finally, I highly recommend you listen to what happened to me last week in part 1. Anyway, on to the events that happened last night. During the week, I took up the issue of the no-show crew member with the head manager. Suffice to say, we didn't exactly talk in calm voices. She was pissed off that I had run the store alone, and I was pissed off because I'd been forced to run the store alone. The woman didn't come up in the conversation on either of our parts. There was no surveillance evidence to say that she was there, and I wasn't exactly going to bring her up without some proof. As much as I was terrified, I needed this job more than she needed me, so any chance she'd get, I'd probably be demoted back to part-time crew. Once I'd extracted the promise from her that the dickwad who didn't show up would arrive for his shift on Wednesday night, I left feeling slightly better than before. At least now she appeared, I'd have someone that could back up my story, even if the security cameras couldn't. Anyway, Wednesday night came, and at 10:30 p.m., half an hour after I'd arrived, the overnighter stuck his head in the door, an apologetic look on his face. The excuse was something along the lines of, "Sorry, I was sick and I didn't know I had to call in beforehand." Bullshit. The truth was undoubtedly more along the lines of, "Sorry for the no-show, went on a mad bender and decided work was going to be too hard." There are signs posted up everywhere that you had to call in at least 6 hours before your shift to give the managers enough time to figure out what to do with the gap in the rosters. I followed up with the typical, "Yeah, don't do it again," and turned back to my pre-overnight checklist. I'd been looking over the roster from last week, something else that I hadn't taken up with the head manager, and it appeared to be what I thought. It was just an accident that no one had been rostered past 11 p.m. At least tonight I had both a closer and an overnighter, so the shift was running smoothly. I'd pretty much forgotten about the terrifying encounter last week, half due to the fact that I threw myself into my duties and immersed myself in the business. I was being paid to stay awake. The least I can do was finish the shift. Midnight came and went. I bid farewell to the closer and locked the front doors securely. I wasn't taking any chances. Now, it was just me and the overnighter, and the store until 5 in the morning. Weekday early start crew show up at 5, not 4, just because the rush isn't as big as weekends. The nights are typically pretty quiet, hence they are labeled bacteria nights. Nights when everything can be scoured with sanitizer and deemed clean by the morning shift. I was cleaning, feeling good about the shift, satisfied with the quality of work the other employee was putting in. As a result, I barely hesitated when I heard the phone ring. "Hello, thanks for calling McDonald's, William speaking." Silence. Suddenly, my thoughts shot back to last week. The phone call. This is how the entire night had started. I persevered though. It can't be all that bad, could it? It could. "Hello?" I spoke into the handset.
"Hello?"
I heard back. I was immediately put at rest by the voice on the other end. Last time it had been only silence. At least there was someone on the line.
"Hello?"
My stomach dropped. The voice had changed. Not slightly, but totally. From masculine to feminine, from bass to falsetto. It fucking terrified me. I hung up the phone immediately. My heart was beating out of my chest. Sweat poured down my forehead. Again, just like last time, the phone rang. This time when I picked up, I didn't speak. I wanted to see what would happen if it would initiate conversation. Silence. Then static. It echoed through the handset, loud enough to make me drop in shock. As it clattered against the tiled floor, the crew member looked at me, shrugged, and continued to clean the grills. I scrambled for the handset, picking it up, but as I went to jam it back into its stand, I heard it. The whispering. There was no phrase, no distinguishable voice, just echo upon echo upon echo, each clamoring for attention. But there was something in it, as if something was being covered by the noise. As I moved my ear closer, curiosity gaining over fear, I heard one word through the static.
Hello.
Thoroughly past the point of rational thought, I smashed the phone into its cradle. With that final movement, the noise stopped, the voices ceased. I breathed a deep sigh of relief. Considerably shaken but still in control, I decided to ignore what had just happened and go about my duties. Maybe it was a one-off. If I was lucky, I was just imagining the calling, or it was someone trying to be funny, some reader from last week thinking they'd prank me. Back in control, I threw myself into work. Time flies when there's a freezer checklist that needs doing. Unlike the other night, this time we had almost nobody through the drive-thru. The cars we did get, 3 or 4 of them, wanted soft drinks or ice cream, which we happily obliged. No need to re-clean the grills if no one orders product. As a result, when 3 a.m. rolled around, I was feeling good again. That's when... Fuck, another car? I ducked out of the office, checked that the crew member was on his break still, smoking out in the front patio, and jumped into the order taker box. I raised my hand and pressed the mic. "Hi, may I take your order, please?" Silence. I glanced up at the security feed located above the register. Nothing. I sighed and ducked back out. Another ghost car. Stupid detector. It needed calibrating Alright, this is ridiculous. Seriously. I jumped back into the box, checking the feed. Yep, this time there was a car there. They were quick and precise. 2 large frozen Cokes. Quick and easy. Dream cars at this time. They paid. I raced down to the next window and poured and handed out their order. It was when they were pulling out of the drive-thru that I glanced back towards the booth and I fucking saw something. A silhouette coming off the light from the order booth. No, fucking no, it can't be. I ran back to the manager's office. I looked up at the feed. She was back. The same white, torn dress. The same long, wild hair. She stood in a lane, but unlike last time, this time she was bent double almost, over the box. But she wasn't focused on the speaker this time. This time she was staring at the security camera, at me. Her skin was pallid. The hair that fell about it looked wispy, pale, as if I could take a handful out by just tugging her. All of her other facials were slightly obscured, as if the camera was blurring her out. But the worst part was the whispering. It crept through my headset, through my mind, incessantly repeating itself. A choir of tortured voices crying for the joy of being singly heard over and over. Hello? I couldn't stop watching. The voice wasn't just my own now. It was everyone's. Everyone I knew and didn't. Each voice was instantly familiar, but easily forgettable. It was the ambient sound of a crowd, a collection of sound bites that could be harvested from any busy place, was twisted and manipulated to conform to a singularity. Snap. The screen blacked out for a second, then came back to resemble a clear lane. She was gone. I released the counter that up until this point I hadn't realized I'd been crushing to splinters. I exhaled a breath that I didn't realize I was holding and turned around and moved towards the front counter. My coworker was still outside, smoking, but he wasn't alone. She stood a little further beyond him, out of his view, but in mine. And now I can see why I wrote down that she was smiling. Her lips were gone, not smoothly, but torn, jagged, lacking any surgical precision. Her entire upper and lower rows of teeth were exposed in a skeletal parody of a grin. Her, or its, head was tilted in a way that would call into doubt the solidity of one's vertebrae. As my crew member stood outside, a walking horror stood beside him. As I readied myself to scream at him to come inside, it moved. She went from stock still to a pose, her index finger held mockingly over her lips in a twisted message. Shh. Even as I watched, she slowly inched backwards, further out of view, until she got past the light of the neon signage. Within seconds, she was gone. Permanently, it seemed. My crew member came in from his break, gave me an odd look, but immediately went back to work. The rest of the shift blurred into a sleep-deprived mess of cleaning, filing, and writing. I couldn't have been happier to see the arrival of the morning crew. I know what you all want, proof of what happened, but again, I went to check the security footage, and again, like last time, it had been glitched for the entire time of its time at the store. My crew member never saw it. There were no customers, no scald notes. I'm starting to think this might all be brought on by sleep deprivation. I really hope it is. There's one thing that's been bothering me since Wednesday night. Every shift, I drive and park in the customer car park, much closer to the store than the employee spots are. But every night I work, I lock and check my car. There's been some recent robberies in my area, and I don't want to be one of them. Call me overcautious, but I know for certain when I approached my car that morning, I had locked it when I arrived. It was unlocked in the morning. Not giving it enough thought in my sleep-deprived state, I drove home, but it's been bothering me ever since, mainly because every time I've looked in the mirror since, my heart pounds and my body jumps. It's only for a split second, but she's standing by my reflection, a finger to her lips,